After a man had both his testicles removed at the hospital, he discovered the surgery was a mistake. The cancer cells had already spread throughout his body. But instead of being angry upon learning this, he gripped the safety amulet his wife had left him and burst into laughter because he felt that only a death that leaves one without descendants could appease the soul of his deceased wife. But when he opened his eyes again, what you saw was the window of your old home, with a dust-covered double happiness character. Then you quickly searched inside and outside the house and saw Zhou Yao naked, curled up on the earthen bed. At this moment, her large eyes were filled with lifelessness. On her once flawless fair skin were crisscrossing bruises. And seeing again the woman who had haunted your dreams for half your life, you immediately became emotional and stepped forward to pull her into your arms. There was so much guilt and longing to express, but in this moment, it all choked in your throat, and you began to weep in distress. In your previous life, you plotted to make Zhou Yao fall into the reservoir, causing the villagers to see her disheveled. As if she had been saved by you, for the sake of her reputation, she was forced to marry you, but from the moment Zhou Yao entered your home, she never enjoyed a single day of happiness. Amidst your endless domestic violence, she jumped into the reservoir with a child to commit suicide. It wasn't until your brother-in-law recovered the bodies of the mother and daughter from the river that you finally woke up to your mistakes. Afterward, although you rode the wave of the era and earned wealth that could last 10 lifetimes, but the woman who taught you growth with her life was already gone, just as you were immersed in the joy of rebirth. A shrill cry suddenly rang out. "Ah, get away, don't touch me." Looking at Zhou Yao trembling all over, you suddenly remembered that this time, Zhou Yao had borrowed money from her parents to buy rice cereal for the child, but you snatched it away to buy alcohol. And after coming home drunk, you brutally tortured her in bed. Thinking of this, you raised your hand and violently slapped yourself a dozen times. Soon, blood flowed from the corner of your mouth. Zhou Yao watched your actions quietly and couldn't help but give a sarcastic smile. She had lost count of how many times this had happened. After all, every time you sobered up, you would kneel and beg for forgiveness. But within 2 days, your fists and feet would fall upon Zhou Yao again. She could endure the humiliation of your torture in bed, but she couldn't bear the baby having nothing to eat. The baby's weak crying brought a flicker of life back to Zhou Yao's beautiful phoenix eyes. She hurriedly put on her clothes and picked up her daughter, but because of Zhou Yao's long-term malnutrition, the little one, unable to get any milk, began to wail loudly again, and the daughter's crying woke you up. You immediately got out of bed and picked up the clothes on the floor. "Wife, just wait. I'll go get some food for our girl right now." Saying this, you ran with your long legs toward the village store. Old man Huang at the store saw you and asked with his big yellow teeth, "What wine do you want this time?" "Uncle Huang, can I get a bag of rice cereal on credit? I'll give you the money tomorrow." Hearing that you wanted credit again, Old man Huang looked at the red, swollen slap marks on your face. He said nothing and took a bag of rice cereal from the shelf for you. After thanking him gratefully, you rushed home. When you entered the room and saw your wife still as she was when you left, your heart tightened with pain once again. "Wife, I bought the rice cereal. I warn you, don't you dare sell my daughter. Otherwise, I curse the Zhao family to have no descendants." Seeing this scene, you froze in place, vaguely remembering that something like this had happened. Originally, you wanted to sell your daughter to a couple in town to get money for alcohol. What kind of bastard things had you done? No wonder you died of testicular cancer in your previous life. You had it coming, so you placed the rice cereal on the shabby little bed. "I swear I will never sell our girl. Tomorrow I'll go to town to find work." After saying that, you turned and walked out. Once outside, you violently slapped yourself a few more times. If you remember correctly, Zhou Yao jumped into the reservoir with their daughter this month. Thinking of this, you trembled all over, seeing that it was already late, and the house had run out of food. 20 minutes later, you arrived at the foot of the back mountain and pulled the elastic band from your underwear. To make a slingshot, snap, you fired a pellet, and a turtle dove flapped its wings and flew away. In your previous life, after you became wealthy, you fell in love with the sport of shooting and had played with slingshots for a while. Squatting in the grass for half a day, you finally managed to bag a hill pheasant. Used a slingshot to hunt a few turtle doves. The turtle doves were small. 4 of them together weighed barely a pound or 2. But that pheasant was fat, weighing about 5 pounds. You tied these things up with rattan vines and hung them on a tree branch. Just as you were preparing to carry them home, you suddenly realized something blue on your back was gone. You were instantly scared witless. Have I encountered a ghost? Suddenly, you saw a flash of light from the peace amulet hanging on your chest. This was something your wife in your previous life always kept close. It was neither jade nor plastic. Until she jumped into the river to commit suicide. She took it off and threw it by the reservoir. By the time you looked closely, the light of the amulet had vanished again. You couldn't help but reach out to touch it. The next second, you entered a space. In terms of area, it wasn't even as large as your hospital room. After several trials, you finally understood. Squeezing the amulet allows you to enter, and thinking about leaving allows you to exit. With this special ability, you could make a comeback in this life. On the way home, many households already had electricity, but your own home still used kerosene lamps, even though the hardest year of the disaster had passed. You still lived hand to mouth. You carried the things straight into the kitchen. After it became completely dark, you carried a large bowl of turtle dove soup into the main room. Yao Yao, it's time to eat. I made turtle dove soup. It'll help increase your milk supply. After calling 3 times, Zhou Yao slowly walked out from the inner room. When she saw the turtle dove soup in the large bowl on the table, she didn't rush to approach. She just stood there, her eyes filled with hatred. At this moment, looking at your wife's patched-up clothes, a wave of bitterness rose in your heart. In this era of material scarcity, Zhou Yao's beauty was exceptionally striking. But you were just a scoundrel who didn't cherish her after winning her over, seeing her so guarded now. Although you longed to sit and eat with her, you also understood that if you stayed, she certainly wouldn't touch her chopsticks. I'll eat in the kitchen. After saying that, you turned and walked out, while Zhou Yao remained standing there, gazing at the large bowl filled with turtle dove soup. A feeling of unreality surged in her heart. Is this a dream, or is this a last meal? In the past, whenever there was something to eat, you always made sure you were full first, while she could only drink the pot-rinsing water. So although she was starving now, Zhou Yao didn't dare to start eating. Not until she walked out the door and saw you squatting under the window drinking soup, with a large wild pheasant hanging at the kitchen door. Guessing that you must have gone to the mountains to hunt. Only then did Zhou Yao turn back to the main room, picked up the bowl and began to eat. After finishing the meal, under your wife's wary gaze, you took over the task of washing the dishes. You had been a lazy man before. This might be the first time in this house that you seriously did the housework. After finishing all this, thinking of the bastard things you did during the day, you boiled a pot of hot water and brought it into the room. Yao Yao, use this water to wipe your body. After saying that, you put down the basin, turned and left in a hurry. Sitting at the door, after a long time, the faint sound of splashing water came from inside, while you looked up at the starry sky, planning to find a way to make money tomorrow, to quickly improve the family's situation. It's already autumn. In winter, temperatures drop to 20 degrees, freezing every drop of water. Your wife and child both need new cotton clothes. Otherwise, they won't survive this winter. After hearing the water stop, you stood up and walked into the room. Seeing you appear suddenly, Zhou Yao was so scared she kept shrinking back. Don't come over here. Seeing this scene, You cursed yourself for being such a beast before, and knew that her trauma wouldn't be resolved overnight. So you reminded her in a gentle tone. "Wife, I'm just coming in to take the water out." After speaking, you picked up the water on the floor and stepped out. Zhou Yao ignored you, and as soon as you left, she quickly put on her clothes. In the courtyard, using the hot water your wife had used, you gave yourself a quick rinse. After all, to hunt those few turtle doves, you had been lying in the grass for a long time. After washing, you sat down on the threshold, recalling the experiences of your previous life. For a period of time, several outsiders always wanted to enter the mountains to gather things. Fearing they would get lost, they found the idol you to lead the way. Back then you thought those city folk were just bored and had nothing to do. Having seen their antics many times, you also knew how to harvest those wild dendrobiums. Now you could dig them up and sell them. Thinking of this, you suddenly felt energized. You tied a torch, prepared some not-so-professional tools, then shouted into the house, "Yao! Lock the door, I'm going out for a bit." You stayed out for the whole night, not returning home until 4 a.m. Speaking of which, you were lucky. Unexpectedly found a civet den while going down the mountain, pulled out a few baby civets that hadn't opened their eyes yet, handled them efficiently upon returning home. After leaving one in the kitchen, you carried 2 baskets to town. The town has a market on odd-numbered days. You found a crowded spot, took out the civet meat and skins from the baskets. "Young man, these mountain goods are quite good. You originally thought they wouldn't sell, and would just take them back to stew in a pot, to share some with the eldest brother, second brother, and third sister's families." Unexpectedly, as soon as the items were set out, someone asked about the price of the civet meat. An old man and woman saw that you were a young man, tan dark, clearly a mountain dweller. Plus the price was affordable. They decided to take 2. In this era, meat coupons were needed to eat meat. Only these kinds of mountain goods could be bought. To take them back and give the little grandson a treat. Before leaving, the old woman tugged at the old man's clothes to signal him to also buy up all the civet skins, saying it was to make gloves for the little grandson. Just like that, in less than 2 hours, all the civets were sold out. Then you took the high-quality goods gathered yesterday to the town's long-established pharmacy. When you took out the items, the old man with thick glasses stared blankly, carefully took over the high-quality goods, examined them carefully, then extended his hand to signal a price. "Little brother, this price." You saw the price he offered. Your brow frowned slightly. This man thought you were a mountain bumpkin he could cheat. So you reached out to take back your things. Seeing this, the old man reached out to stop you, then stroked his goatee and comforted you. "Little brother, if you're not satisfied with the price, we can negotiate." 6 yuan notes. Cannot be any higher. Although this high-quality piece was accidentally stepped on and broken, its value was far more than this price. But you needed money urgently. Your wife and child were still starving at home. After thinking for a moment, you decided to sell, then went to buy meat and flour, visited 2 supply and marketing cooperatives to finally buy the rare milk powder of this era. When about to return, thought of your wife, the set of old, patched clothes she wore yesterday. Then entered the town's only small state-run department store. On the way back, you took a detour to find an old hunter in his 70s. Gave him a pile of food, to finally trade for the old hunter's precious shotgun, and took it away. In this era, meat requires coupons. To achieve freedom of eating meat, one still needs to do it themselves. When almost home, only then did you notice Zhou Yao working in the fields with the child on her back. Brother Zhao Zhengxing saw you and came over. Immediately flew into a rage. "Where the hell have you been? Letting your wife work in the fields by herself, looking at the eldest brother before you." Your nose tingled. "I went to town to work and bought some meat and flour on the way back. Tonight, bring your sister-in-law and the child to our house for dinner." Hearing this, eldest brother used a suspicious gaze to look you up and down, looking at the mud spots on your pant legs, and looked at the full baskets. Your sister-in-law just steamed a pot of cornmeal buns at noon. Let your wife take a few back later. We won't go over to eat. Treat your wife well from now on, so you didn't say anything more. Nodded and carried the things back home. To coax your wife, you must first satisfy her stomach, and so you began to get busy in the kitchen. When it was almost dark, Zhou Yao returned home carrying a few cornmeal buns. But as soon as she entered the yard, she smelled the aroma of meat from the kitchen, so she hurried to the kitchen door and saw you busy in front of the simple stove. Zhou Yao had been busy all day and was starving. After putting away the cornmeal buns, she entered the bedroom, placed the sleeping child on the small bed. Just as she turned her head, she saw a can of milk powder on the table. Zhou Yao's blood suddenly rushed to her head, rushed into the kitchen, and gave you a slap. Did you go and force my mother to give you money again? How can you be such a scoundrel? Suddenly reminded of this matter by your wife, you gradually remembered that you, this bastard, had indeed threatened your mother-in-law with a knife for money. So you hurriedly denied it. I didn't. I earned all this money today. As you spoke, you quickly reached into your trousers. Seeing this, Zhou Yao became even angrier. She immediately stepped forward and gave you another loud slap. What time is it now? And you're still thinking about that? After taking 2 consecutive slaps, you were left not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Seeing that Zhou Yao had no intention of stopping, you hurriedly pulled out 5 10-yuan bills from your trousers. Wife, this is the money I earned today. Take it. When Zhou Yao saw the bills being forced into her hand, she felt her head spin. Seeing your wife about to fall, you reached out to support her, but Zhou Yao violently knocked your hand away. She simply couldn't believe that a loafer like you could earn so much money in a single day. What kind of shady business had he been doing outside? What should I do? Life is truly unbearable. Seeing that Zhou Yao didn't believe you at all, you almost knelt before her. I went up the mountain last night to gather wild dendrobium and happened to come across a civet den. Those things were exchanged for 6 10-yuan bills. I spent 1 to buy grain, and this is all that's left. Hearing dendrobium, Zhou Yao's eyes finally showed some light. Ginseng in the north, dendrobium in the south. That stuff has high medicinal value and can be sold for money, but it grows deep in the mountains and is very hard to find, especially in the dead of night. But thinking carefully, when she woke up this morning, there were indeed bloodstains by the well, and civet meat was stewing in the pot. Could it be that she had really misjudged him? How did he even know about dendrobium? Under Zhou Yao's gaze, you raised your right hand and swore, I really didn't do anything bad. Otherwise, may I have no descendants. Seeing your wife's breathing stabilize a bit, and her gaze becoming less fierce, you breathed a sigh of relief. Yao, hurry and put the money away. I'm going to take some meat to eldest brother's house, so they can have a taste too, although hiding the money in the space was safer. Giving the money to your wife meant handing over the authority of the household. Then you picked up a plate of stir-fried civet meat and placed the stewed crucian carp tofu soup on the living room table. Then you went back to the kitchen to scoop a full bowl of meat and headed toward eldest brother's house. On the way, you also paid back old Huang's money for the rice porridge and the previous debt for liquor. Meanwhile, Zhou Yao gazed at the bills in her hand and hurried back into the room. In the 2+ years since she married in, you had always been scavenging money from her. This was the first time you had proactively handed over money, so she split the money into 5 portions and hid them in different places. After finishing this, hearing steady footsteps coming from outside, she walked out of the room, looking at the steaming dish and soup on the table. She felt a bit dazed. She then went to the kitchen for a look. The flour vat was more than half full, the oil jar was also full, and a 10+ gin piece of pork belly was hanging from the beam. Had he really changed? At this moment, Zhou Yao wasn't sure. After all, a leopard cannot change its spots. Seeing Zhou Yao sit down, you placed a mountain chicken leg into her bowl. I'll go up the mountain early tomorrow morning, while winter hasn't arrived yet, and quickly harvest all the places where dendrobium can be dug. After all, this is currently the fastest way to make money. Once the whole country opens up, I can use the money to invest in other things. Hearing your words, Zhou Yao was stunned for a moment, nodded her head, and said nothing, even if he had just had dog-shit luck last night, and found one piece of dendrobium. How could he be that lucky every time? Zhou Yao wanted to remind you that if you really wanted to earn money, you should find a job. Although it would only be a few cents a day, it was better than having no income at all. But thinking of your temperament, as long as you didn't go out gambling and drinking, she would just let you be. She held her chopsticks, wanting to put the chicken leg back in the bowl. Seeing her do this, you quickly used the child as an excuse to stop her. Wife, you're too thin. Eat more, otherwise the baby won't have enough milk. No matter how good formula is, it can't compare to breast milk. Besides, formula is expensive and hard to buy. This is Crucian carp tofu soup. Drinking it helps increase milk supply. These words made Zhou Yao glare at you. The knuckles of the hand holding the chopsticks turned white, but she didn't refuse again. You've been tossing and turning for a day and a night, both sleepy and exhausted. The family's livelihood problem is finally solved. After filling your stomach, you said directly, "Wife, I'm going to sleep first." Saying this, you stood up and entered the inner room. You fell asleep as soon as your head hit the pillow. When Zhou Yao finished washing the dishes and returned to the room, she saw the clothes you had taken off on the floor. She frowned, then she picked them up and washed them by the moonlight. After finishing, she dragged her exhausted body back to the bedroom. Not paying attention, her foot kicked a basket. Zhou Yao picked it up and looked. It was actually a set of brand new women's clothes, and 3 sets of small clothes for the baby. So she stared at the sleeping you for a while. I don't quite understand this person anymore. You slept such a deep, oblivious sleep. The daughter woke up twice during the night, but she couldn't wake you up at all. Not until early morning did you dizzily open your eyes. You turned over and saw Zhou Yao curled up with her back to you. At this time, she was only wearing a worn-out little vest. Looking at her made you drool. After all, after Zhou Yao died in your previous life, you never looked for another woman. So you reached out and pulled her into your arms. All of this felt like a dream. So surreal, just as you were about to lean down and give her a kiss, the wife in your arms suddenly stiffened, clearly resisting your touch. So you suppressed the bitterness in your heart and rolled out of bed. For now, you'll just have to endure this. You took the clean clothes off the drying line. Not caring that they weren't dry, you quickly put them on. Then, you stealthily took the things out of the basket and placed them on the table. At this moment, Zhou Yao sat up in bed. With a cold face, she said to you, "If you really want a chain, then find some work. As long as you're willing to work hard, you can make over 10 yuan a month. Our family's life could be manageable." Hearing your wife take the initiative to speak to you, you felt a surge of joy, knowing that Zhou Yao was considering your well-being. But since heaven gave you the chance to live another life, you must, when everything opens up, save up enough seed money. In the previous life, after the mother and daughter left, you were like a stray dog, wandering outside for some time. Later, you met a benefactor. That gave you the chance to be a waiter in a state-run store. Because you were sweet-talking and articulate, you were gradually promoted to manager. And because of that, you had the chance to cross social classes and meet powerful people. In this life, you want to rely on your own hands to earn your first pot of gold as quickly as possible. Therefore, hunting and gathering dendrobium is the fastest way to make money now. More importantly, you now possess the memories of your previous life. You know where the dendrobium is located. Such a great opportunity, how could you possibly let it slip? It's just that for now, you don't know how to explain to your wife why you insist on going up the mountain to gather dendrobium. Seeing you remain silent for so long, Zhou Yao knew your stubborn streak had kicked in. She simply pulled up the quilt and lay back down. In the pot on the kitchen stove, there are some cornmeal buns left for you. Hearing her words, Your eyebrows shot up, your face full of uncontrollable joy. Immediately, you came to the bedside and gave Zhou Yao a kiss on the cheek. Wife, I settled it with our eldest brother yesterday. You don't need to go help them today. Once the pork in the kitchen is ready, I'll send half of it to my mother-in-law. As for Zhou Yao seeing you approach, she thought she had annoyed you and that you were going to hit her again, but she didn't expect to be surprised by you. Whatever you said, she didn't hear clearly, nor did she see. Before leaving, you also gave your daughter a kiss. By the time she snapped out of it, you were already long gone. In the dim room, only she and the daughter sleeping in the small bed remained. Although it was still early, she tossed and turned, and simply couldn't fall back asleep. She just lay in bed until the sun was high in the sky. Then she heard someone knocking on the door. Second sister-in-law coming over so early. Is there something? Liu Gihua's eyes darted toward the kitchen. Smiling with great delight. Fourth brother's wife. I heard from the eldest sister-in-law that your family had meet last night. Did your fourth brother win big gambling? Speaking without waiting for an answer, her feet seemed to have eyes of their own. Creeping toward the kitchen door. Good heavens, fourth brother couldn't have stolen or robbed, could he? How much would such a large piece of meat cost? Everyone hasn't seen any meat for half a year. The children cried for days, but I couldn't bear to buy any, finally pulling her gaze away. But then she glimpsed on the dark wall. There was actually half a wild chicken hanging. She instantly lost her composure. Fourth brother's wife. You must keep a close eye on your man. Gambling might lead to a labor camp. Hearing this, Zhou Yao, her expression gradually darkened. Second sister-in-law, what are you saying? If he breaks the law, the police will naturally catch him. No need for you to worry about it. Liu Gihua wanted to say more, but her eyes rolled. As if she thought of something, she swallowed the words she was about to say. Don't be angry with your second sister-in-law. Am I not also worried about our fourth brother? My husband and he are blood brothers. My little Bao cried because he craved meat. See if you can lend me 5 pounds of meat first. I'll have your second brother send the money later. After getting along for over 2 years, Zhou Yao saw through everything clearly. She had long since figured out what kind of person this second sister-in-law was. Once something enters her house, it's like throwing a meat bun at a dog, asking for 5 pounds of meat in one go. Not to mention, she didn't dare decide to lend it. Even if she had the authority, it would be impossible. I can't decide on such a big matter. Second sister-in-law, wait for fourth brother to return and tell him. Saying this, she walked over and bolted the kitchen door. Seeing her like this, Liu Gihua felt very displeased. Fine then. When fourth brother returns, remember to tell him to help me send the meat home. As she turned to leave, the smile on Liu Gihua's face vanished. On the mountain, it was nearly noon. Relying on memories from your previous life, after much effort, you found a wild dendrobium. With the experience of yesterday's darkness, by the time most of the root system was exposed, it was already late. This one was much larger than yesterday's. Until the sky turned dark, only then did you carefully extract the large root completely. Just as you were preparing to go down the mountain, you turned around and encountered a sika deer. It looked like it came to eat the dendrobium. Seeing this, you quickly took out the shotgun you traded for yesterday from your space. In a heartbeat, a gunshot rang out in the forest, startling the birds to scatter and flee. Meanwhile at home, Zhou Yao had finished cooking. After preparing the formula for her daughter, you still hadn't returned. She frowned deeply. Dendrobium isn't that easy to find. He really needs to learn a proper trade. Just as Zhou Yao was lost in thought, you quietly entered the courtyard, only when you took the items out of the basket. Did Zhou Yao inside the house hear a sound? She walked out holding her daughter. Wash your hands and let's eat. After saying that, she went back inside with the daughter. You noticed your wife glance at the basket. But she didn't say a word. Once inside the house, seeing the steaming hot food on the table, Your eyes grew moist, wishing you could go back to your previous life and slap yourself. Such a beautiful and virtuous wife. Why didn't you cherish her? You walked to the table and sat down, devouring the food. Wife, I'll head to the village chief's house in a bit to get the electricity lines connected these few days. Hearing this, Zhou Yao paused while patting the child. She couldn't help but speak. Once the electricity is on, we'll have to pay electricity bills every month. After speaking, she stole a glance at you, fearing she might annoy you enough to flip the table. You keenly noticed Zhou Yao's expression. Then you put down your chopsticks, walked to the door, and carried the basket into the house. Wife, this is what I dug up today. I'll sell it at the city pharmacy another day. It should fetch a good price. Zhou Yao stared intently at the wild dendrobium. She looked up at you, asking in a tone of disbelief, "Did you really dig this up?" Seeing this, you continued to explain. "I swear I didn't steal or rob. This is truly the result of digging in the mountains all day." Seeing your calm expression, she finally nodded with some hesitation. Second sister-in-law came by during the day. She wants to borrow 5 pounds of pork. Seeing Zhou Yao's long face, she was clearly unhappy, probably because I wasn't home, and the second sister-in-law gave her a hard time. So you said with a serious face, "From now on, you are the boss of this house. The money and belongings are all under your control. If you don't want to lend, we won't lend." Hearing this, Zhou Yao felt hesitant. After thinking for a while, she said timidly, "I don't want to lend. The second sister-in-law says she'll borrow, but she definitely won't return it. This isn't the first time she borrowed things from us and didn't return them." Hearing Zhou Yao's words, a relieved smile appeared on your face. You affectionately pinched her nose. "If you don't want to lend, we won't. We won't put up with her." With this smile, Zhou Yao was stunned. Then she picked up their daughter and went to the inner room. As for you, after filling your stomach, you washed the dishes. Then you cut half a jin of meat and went out in the dark. When village chief Wang Xuanzhu saw it was you, his dark old face froze for a moment. Then seeing the meat in your hand, his wrinkled face beamed with a smile. "Zhao Kun, what brings you to see me so late?" he asked while taking the meat from your hand. "I want to install an electric light at home. Could you help arrange it when you're free?" "Sure. I'll arrange it for you tomorrow." Hearing this, you didn't stay long. You stood up, thanked him, and left. But when you walked to the kitchen, you saw Zhou Yao in the pitch-black kitchen, gnawing on the meat bones you had left over. This scene pierced your eyes with pain. Your blood seemed to freeze in your veins. Then you said in a hoarse voice, "What are you doing?" Hearing your voice, Zhou Yao shuddered in fear. The bone at her lips fell to the ground. She looked at you in the yard with a face full of terror. "Don't hit me. These were just the leftovers," you gnawed. "I just thought it would be a waste to throw them away." At this moment, you felt like a thunderbolt struck you. You had never felt so defeated. Then you suddenly knelt before her. And Zhou Yao screamed in terror. "What do you want to do?" Zhou Yao lowered her eyelids slightly, looking at the man kneeling before her, until she felt warmth and moisture on her chest. He was actually crying. Her long-closed heart seemed to soften a bit. Seeing your wife so terrified just for eating your leftovers was like a knife stabbing deep into your heart. So you stood up from the ground, cupping your wife's fair cheeks. You leaned down to kiss away the tears from her eyes. "Wife, go wait in the main room. I'll bring the food in once it's ready. You are my great benefactor." Zhou Yao didn't understand this sentence. She slipped out of the kitchen, shy as if she'd seen a ghost. You busied yourself in the kitchen for a while. A fragrant plate of stir-fried pork was ready. The coarse grain buns that stung her throat. But your wife cherished them and didn't want to waste a bite. But as soon as you entered the inner room, a snow-white beautiful back came into view. Suddenly, blood rushed to your lower body. You stepped forward and pulled her into your arms from behind. "Wife, Don't leave me again." In the depths of passion, Zhou Yao felt for a moment that doing this kind of thing was such a comfortable and pleasurable thing. This was the first time since their honeymoon that the two had slept together so intimately. Thinking of last night's scene, Zhou Yao's cheeks felt hot. Turning her head and seeing the child in the crib, Zhou Yao's face suddenly turned pale with fright. Last night, she seemed not to have heard the daughter crying all night. Seeing your wife suddenly change her expression, staring intently toward the daughter, you quickly got out of bed and rushed to the daughter's crib in a few steps, seeing that the daughter was already awake, smiling with her two big eyes wide open. At this moment, looking at your daughter, your heart melted. You carefully held your daughter in your arms. Returning to the bedside, seeing the daughter was fine and still grinning, the heavy stone in Zhou Yao's heart finally settled. Her tense nerves finally relaxed. Then her eyes reddened. She almost burst into tears, annoyed that she had slept so deeply last night. Such a small child. If something had gone wrong, how could she go on living? Wife, stay and lie with Niunu for a bit longer. I'll go make breakfast for you. Zhou Yao then checked the diaper under the daughter's bottom. Although it wasn't wrapped very neatly, but it had been changed and was clean. No wonder she hadn't heard the daughter crying last night. So it was this scoundrel who got up to care for the daughter. This is the first time since the child was born that he has taken the initiative to care for the child. So has he really changed? Can I trust him one more time? On the other side, you are busy in the kitchen. By the time your wife comes out holding the baby, the meal is already prepared. Tofu baby bok choy, corn porridge, and multigrain buns. Shirtless, you take the baby from Zhou Yao's arms. Wife, go wash up first. Zhou Yao feels a bit uneasy, but seeing you clumsy, holding such a tiny baby, she lets out a giggle. This is your own daughter. Not a tiger. As if she could bite you. During the meal, village chief Wang Xuanzhu arrives with an electrician. Entering the yard, he sees Zhou Yao, sitting at the yard table eating, while you wander around the yard shirtless, holding the baby. He notices a neat ring of teeth marks on the inside of your arm, and smiles meaningfully. Zhao Kun, you haven't even finished eating yet. You didn't expect Wang Xuanzhu to find someone so early, and bring both the chief and the electrician to chat at the gate outside the yard. After Zhou Yao finishes eating and goes inside, you finally hand the baby back to your wife. Then, from the pocket of your loose boxers, you pull out a pack of Dakian men. The chief looks at the Dakian men's cigarette in his hand, grins with his yellow teeth and says, "You brat, you've made something of yourself. A pack of these costs 40 cents. The electrician beside him smiles even more simply, tucks the cigarette behind his ear, and carries the ladder around to the back of the house. This job is quite a bargain. He usually can't afford to smoke 40-cent cigarettes. This family is quite generous. Once the electricity is connected, you go back into the house. Just as you step inside, a piece of clothing flies toward you. Before you can figure out what's happening, you hear Zhou Yao say, "Put your clothes on quickly. What do you look like wandering around shirtless?" At this moment, there are several scratch marks on your back. Those were left by Zhou Yao last night. The chief and the electrician both saw them, but neither of them mentioned it. Yet you are completely oblivious, wandering around shirtless. This makes Zhou Yao so embarrassed. She wishes she could sink into the ground. With strangers around, she was too shy to remind you. Not until you went up the mountain did Zhou Yao cover her burning cheeks and calm down for a while. Then she continued taking down the bedding to wash. She moves the baby's small bed into the yard, places the baby on it, fills a basin with water, preparing to wash the bedding. Just then, Mother Zhou arrives carrying a basket. Inside are eggs and a small piece of meat. Seeing her mother, Zhou Yao quickly wipes her hands and stands up. "Mother, why are you here?" Mother Zhou carries the basket into the kitchen, her gaze scanning her daughter up and down. Seeing her worn-out, ill-fitting clothes, her eyes well up with tears. She quickly looks away, picks up her granddaughter from the small bed and says, "I just finished the chores at home, so I came to see you." As she speaks, her eyes scan the dilapidated three-room mud and thatch cottage. In her heart, she is constantly regretting that she shouldn't have agreed to this marriage. She has made her daughter's life miserable. Zhou Yao mom has thought about it. If you really can't live with him, just divorce him. You are young and have a long life ahead. Your whole life cannot be ruined by a scoundrel like him. Hearing her mother's words, Zhou Yao is stunned for a moment, sitting on the stool for a long time without saying a word. That day, you snatched the money she borrowed from her parents. The money meant to buy rice cereal for the daughter. To buy alcohol, she truly felt utterly hopeless, feeling that being with him offered no hope whatsoever. Even thoughts of death crossed her mind. She wanted to jump into the reservoir with her daughter. But after you sobered up, first in regret, you slapped yourself a dozen times. Then you rushed out in a panic to buy rice cereal for the child. Over the past few days, she sees that you seem to have truly become a different person, no longer fooling around outside, no longer drinking, no longer gambling. Mother sees her daughter keeping her head down in silence, thinking she is worried about the child. She says, "If you want to keep the child, Mom can help you raise her in the future." At this point, she hesitates for a moment. It's just that in the future, if you stay home to raise the child, it will be hard to remarry. In these times, divorce is very rare. No matter how bitter or difficult life is, women must grit their teeth and endure. Hearing that her mother had even thought through the matter of remarrying after divorce, Zhou Yao took the child from her mother's arms. "Mom, I'm not thinking of divorcing right now." He seems to be slowly improving now. As she spoke, she tugged at the child's brand new little outfit. He earned money to buy these clothes for the child. And bought a set for me too. But I couldn't bring myself to wear them. Mother Zhou looked at her daughter's fair and youthful face, which had a glow not seen in a long time. A light seemed to return to her eyes, and she couldn't help but daze for a moment. She had clearly overheard by chance yesterday Magi from next door saying that he owed an outsider 50 yuan. Such a large debt, and he doesn't do honest work, so how could he pay it back? That was exactly why she was worried, which is why she brought things over early this morning. But looking at her daughter's expression, it didn't seem fake. At this point, she didn't tell her daughter what she had heard, fearing she would start arguing with him again because of it. She gathered her thoughts and nodded with relief, her eyes reddening. If he can change, that's good. Then Mom can be at peace. Saying this, she raised her hand to wipe the tears from her eyes. Meanwhile, you, who had just gone up the mountain, were munching on a multigrain steamed calculating how much it would cost to build a second floor now, based on the current price of the dendrobiums you could dig. After building the house, there would still be a sum of money that, in this era, would be considered a very substantial saving. After all, at this time, 10,000 yuan households were rare. Thinking that you'd definitely have to live in the village for the next 2 years, you decided to improve the living conditions first. The 3 dilapidated mud brick rooms you lived in now. Once inside, with your height, you felt you couldn't even stand straight. The dust inside was incredibly thick, with debris falling everywhere. It was truly not a place fit for humans. At this moment, you had no idea at all that your mother-in-law was discussing with your wife whether or not to get a divorce. If you knew about this, you probably wouldn't have the heart to dig dendrobiums on the mountain. After all, having been reborn into this life, making money is important to you, but nothing is more important than your wife and child, mastering the money-making ways of your previous life. You were naturally not in a rush for a moment. Seeing that it was almost noon, Mother Zhou didn't even bother to eat, and was anxious to return home, fearing that if she ate one more bite, her daughter would have 1 bite less. Zhou Yao couldn't stop her, so she had to take the meat hanging in the kitchen, cut off a large portion with 1 slice, and chased after her. "Mom, take this back for my brother and sister-in-law to eat." Seeing such a large piece of meat, Mother Zhou waved her hands repeatedly, refusing it, fearing that if you knew she was supporting her maiden home like this, you would hit her daughter again. She was even more afraid her daughter would have nothing to eat and would suffer. "Keep it for yourselves to eat. We aren't lacking this at home." Look at how thin you've become. Like anything, you need to nourish yourself more. Otherwise, how will the child have milk to drink? In the end, Mother Zhou still didn't take the meat and walked away step by step with her basket. Zhou Yao stood at the door, watching her mother walk further and further away, until she was out of sight. Then she carried the meat and turned back into the kitchen. Zhang Gilan from next door was about the same age as Zhou Yao, but she had married 2 years earlier. Her skin was dark, and she was munching on a raw radish, leaning over the wall. "Sister, you don't go out all day. The rumors have already spread. Your second sister-in-law was dealt with by your second brother last night." And several families heard the crying and screaming. Zhou Yao, walking out of the kitchen, sat on a stool in the courtyard, responding absent-mindedly every now and then. Seeing that she didn't say much, Zhang Gilan pulled up a stool and sat in front of her wash basin, lowering her voice to whisper. "Everyone outside is saying that Dabo from your second brother's house isn't his." Upon hearing this, the work in Zhou Yao's hands stopped instantly. She looked up at Zhang Gilan. "He's your eldest brother's seed." Seeing the confusion in her eyes, Zhang Gilan stuffed the remaining radish into her pocket and whispered gossip in her ear with a curious look. After hearing it, Zhou Yao was completely stunned. She truly couldn't believe such a thing existed. She used to respect this eldest brother quite a bit, thinking he was honest and simple, acting fairly, quite like a big brother, but after hearing this, felt a bit uneasy. How could this happen? Zhang Gilan seemed satisfied with her reaction, patted the young wife from the city. "All right, I need to go home and cook for my husband. I won't chat with you anymore." That night you returned very late. This time returning, you saw the lights of home from afar. Couldn't help but marvel. Electric lights are indeed much brighter than kerosene lamps. Zhou Yao saw you return, hurriedly took the heated dishes and white flour buns, and brought them out, casually asked, "Why are you back so late today?" Noticing some dirt on your clothes, put down the dishes and started brushing off the dirt. You quickly stopped her, turned around and bolted the main room door, then fished something out of the straw in the basket, carefully placed it on the table, dug up some dendrobium, had an unexpected find on the way back. You didn't tell your wife that you had slipped and fell down, which is how you found this. It took a lot of effort to climb back up. That's why you returned so late. The price of this thing isn't lower than dendrobium. It's sold by the gram. Consider it a surprise. Made a little fortune. You plan to be intimate with your wife tonight. Won't go to the mountains tomorrow. First, go deal with the goods on hand. Zhou Yao looked at the dark brown piece on the table. Something shaped a bit like ginger. This looks like something she'd seen in a book. Asked uncertainly, "Is this he Shou Wu?" Her tone filled with disbelief. You didn't expect your wife to be so knowledgeable. Most people in the village still don't know how valuable this is. Otherwise, all those treasures on the mountain would have been scavenged long ago. Dendrobium and he Shou Wu will stay valuable for another 10 years. Once cultivation technology improves, these can all be grown artificially. They'll become common in the market and won't be rare anymore. But even then, the prices of wild, rare medicinal herbs are still ridiculously high, because wild ones are simply unobtainable. You grinned widely, pulled your pretty wife into your arms, leaned down and gave her fair cheek a. Looking into her sparkling eyes, you said, "Yes, it is he Shou Wu. Tomorrow I'll take you and the kid for a stroll in the city." Hearing that the child was coming along, Zhou Yao's body suddenly stiffened, recalling what he said before about selling their daughter to a childless family in the city. She was still terrified. Who knows if they really can't conceive, or if they're buying her as a child bride. She broke free from the embrace, refused with defensiveness and vigilance. "The daughter is still small. The two of us won't go. Hurry and wash your hands and eat." You quickly noticed something was wrong with your wife. You wanted to take her out for a walk and buy her some winter clothes. But seeing her become vigilant again, clearly afraid you were plotting something bad for the daughter again, the bastard things you'd done weren't so easily forgiven. Trust had long been overdrawn, just had to take it slow. You took off your shirt stained with dirt, opened the door and walked out to simply wash your face, returned to the room and sat down. Only then did you see the food on the table. A plate of golden scrambled eggs, and a small plate of leftover stir-fried pork from the morning. Seems you need to earn more money quickly. If she keeps being this frugal, when will she ever get plump? Seems I need to earn more money quickly to make her feel secure. Wife, where did these eggs come from? Zhou Yao lowered her head and served you a bowl of flour soup. Not long after you left, my mother came by. She brought them. Her own mother mentioned the divorce. She didn't mention a word. Hearing it was from the mother-in-law. Thinking about asking her for money to drink before. Felt ashamed and couldn't face her. Didn't ask why the mother-in-law had come. Planning in your head. Once the things on hand are sold tomorrow. First pay back the money taken from the mother-in-law. You reached out and pulled your wife, told her to sit. Eat quickly, saying that you handed her a mixed-grain bun. The wife still couldn't bear to steam pure white buns. She steamed mixed-grain buns with half-white flour. You took a cornmeal bun and started devouring it. Zhou Yao took a small bite of the mixed-grain bun, looked up and secretly observed the man before her. It would be so great if he could always be like this. I just don't know how long this enthusiasm will last. The two of them were eating. A knocking sound came from outside. Fourth brother, it's me, Liu Zai. Come out. We're one short. The boys are waiting for you to drink and play cards. Hearing this voice, Zhou Yao's face instantly turned pale. She stared straight at him, fearing you would be like before, following them out to drink and gamble. Hearing this voice, you paused for a moment, then remembered who it was. You put down your chopsticks and looked up, seeing your wife's pale little face. You quickly stood up and pulled her into your arms. Wife, what's wrong? Where does it hurt? Your voice was full of worry and tension. Held in your arms, Zhou Yao's slender, fair fingers gripped your undershirt tightly. Her lips trembled slightly. Are you going to drink and play cards with them again? Hearing this, you finally understood why she was like this. It turns out she was afraid your old habits would return. Resting your chin on her soft hair, your arms instinctively tightened, holding her even closer. Her body in your arms was incredibly frail. After marrying you, she hadn't spent a single good day. Even a full meal had become a luxury. Yet despite this, she still held on to hope for you, wanting to live a stable life with you. Taking a deep breath, you forced back the stinging heat in your eyes, comforting her in a low, husky voice. Don't worry. I'm not going. I'll chase them away right now. I won't mess around with them anymore. After hearing your words, Zhou Yao looked up, staring at you scrutinizingly, and asked, Really not going? You lowered your gaze, meeting your wife's anxious and scrutinizing eyes. You really wanted to tear out your heart for her to see, to tell her that you had truly turned over a new leaf. You couldn't resist pecking her upturned nose again, promising with a breath of clean, warm air. I'm really not going. Rest assured, I'll tell them to get lost right now. Then you gently placed your wife back on the stool. All right. Keep eating. I'll be right back. You straightened up and found that your undershirt was still gripped tightly in her hand. If you didn't know those three guys outside were nothing but trash, you'd really want to take her out with you. Let her watch you reject them, just to put her mind at ease. You lowered your head and kissed the top of her head again. As a comfort, your rough, warm hand gently patted her frail back. Only then did she slowly let go. You straightened your back and walked away with brisk strides. Arriving at the courtyard gate, you opened the wooden door. The people at the door saw you come out. That guy called Liu Zai smiled sleazily, making a crude joke. Fourth brother, this isn't fair. Sister-in-law just finished her confinement, and you can't even leave the house. It's been several days, and you haven't come to drink with us. Hearing those bastardly words, your sharp brows furrowed with anger, and you roared in a deep voice, "Screw you. Keep your mouth clean from now on. If you can't speak properly, shut your mouth." The other two were giggling along. But seeing your expression, they immediately stopped smiling and quickly tried to smooth things over. Fourth brother, he just has a foul mouth. Don't take it to heart. Let's go drinking, boys. As he spoke, he reached out to put his arm on your shoulder. You raised your hand and brushed his arm away. Out of the corner of your eye, you glanced at the other two. As for drinking and playing cards, don't come looking for me anymore. I've quit. Seeing your attitude, the three of them looked as if they'd seen a ghost. They looked at each other, both completely bewildered. That guy called Liu Zai still had a sleazy smile on his face and continued to tease, fearless of death. Fourth brother, are you being controlled by your little wife and can't leave the house? Since she's finished her confinement, why not bring her along to drink with us? Before he could finish speaking, you kicked him, kicking him right in the chest, sending him flying on his back. Lying on the ground groaning, you strode forward, stepping your foot between his legs, bending down with a fierce glint in your dark eyes, staring straight at the bastard on the ground. If you dare spout filth again, I'll sew both your mouths shut and break your third leg. As you spoke, you pressed down harder. Liu Zai lay on the ground, ignoring the pain in his chest, desperately pushing against your foot on his crotch, wailing at the top of his lungs. Fourth brother, I was wrong, I won't talk nonsense again. The two beside him were scared witless. Unable to speak for a long time, you radiated a murderous aura, looking terrifying in the night. No one dared to step forward to stop the fight. They had been afraid of this guy since childhood. He was a ruthless fighter who didn't care for his own life. But today was the first time. They saw that just by getting angry. He was like a starving tiger, ready to devour people, making their spines chill. You feared Liu Zai's wailing would attract your wife. You didn't want her to see your violent side, lest it frighten her if this trivial matter made her fear you again. Then everything would be ruined. You straightened your body, glaring down at Liu Zai on the ground, and pulled your foot back. Get lost. The other two felt as if they'd been granted a pardon, quickly helping Liu Zai up. They said to you, "Fourth brother will be going now." Once the three of them left, you withdrew that aggressive energy and stepped into the courtyard, sliding the door bolt shut. Inside, Zhou Yao, since you had left, had been restless, like sitting on pins and needles, every second feeling like an eternity. Seeing that you hadn't returned for a long time, her heart almost turned cold, though her stomach was growling with hunger, seeing the steaming food on the table without you. She couldn't eat a single bite. In just a few days, seeing you gradually improve, unconsciously, hope for you ignited in her heart again. She didn't expect him to be wealthy and noble. She only hoped he could live a stable life. But if he went back to drinking and gambling, what would she do? The child was still so small, she couldn't possibly take him to work outside. Could it really come to a divorce? While she was lost in thought, she heard steady footsteps. Her eyes instinctively looked toward the sound, seeing his tall figure walking in from the moonlight. At this moment, Zhou Yao's lifeless eyes suddenly lit up. He actually didn't follow those bastards to mess around. While she was still dazed, you had already walked up behind her, bending down to wrap her in your broad embrace, leaning down to kiss your wife's fair cheek. What's wrong? Your man just went out for a bit. Don't you recognize me anymore? As you spoke, you handed the chopsticks to her and sat down at the table, picking up a cornmeal bun and devouring it in large mouthfuls. Zhou Yao was still reacting, subconsciously asking, "Are you really not going to mess around with them anymore?" Reporting to Madam Wife, "I've completely cut ties with them. I won't hang out with them ever again." Only then did Zhou Yao nod and began to eat slowly. While eating, she stole glances at her man from time to time, seeing that you ate quickly, but your eating manner wasn't bad. Paired with his sharp, handsome face, it actually became quite pleasing to the eye. When she first married him, besides the fact that he saved her life, part of the reason was that he was good-looking. She had been blinded by his appearance back then, and combined with the arranged marriage for her brother. That's why she married him, who had nothing. Seeing your wife staring at you dazed, wondering what was going through her little head, you added a golden piece of egg to her bun, curling your lips in a tease. "Wife, eat quickly. I'll let you see enough in bed later." Your nonsense snapped Zhou Yao back to reality, looking at his rogue-like demeanor. After giving you a sharp glare, she lowered her head with a blushing face and ate. Full and in no rush to leave, you curled up on the rickety stool, staring straight at her. The more you looked at your wife, the more you loved her, even though materials are scarce in this era. And the food is poor, and there are hardly any cosmetics. Her skin is still smooth and glowing, more beautiful than celebrities who get injections. You notice the knuckles of your wife's hand holding the chopsticks are red, so you grasp her slender wrist and pull it before your eyes, thinking of the bedsheets drying outside. You plan to sell the items you have tomorrow and get a washing machine coupon from the black market. In this era, many people don't even know what a washing machine is, let alone be willing to spend money on one. With a washing machine, your wife won't have to scrub clothes by hand. Zhou Yao pulls her hand back, feeling truly embarrassed by your gaze. If you're full, go boil some water and wash up. You're covered in mud. You stand up and give your wife a kiss on the cheek. Then head to the kitchen to boil water. After you leave, Zhou Yao puts down her chopsticks and touches her burning cheeks. Since last night, this man has loved hugging and cuddling her and kissing her every now and then. Every time he gets close, she can smell the scent of hormones on him, feeling as if a rabbit is kicking in her heart. Thumping wildly, she can't even figure out what's happening. After the meal, you take Zhou Yao's hand, saying you want to take her for a walk to digest the food on the way back. You don't head home, but lead Zhou Yao in a different direction, a dilapidated mud house beside the cowshed, with a simple earthen stove outside. Inside, a woman covers her chest, coughing incessantly, grabbing a handful of corn to mix with water and putting it into a chipped ceramic pot. Just these few steps, and large beads of white sweat appear on her face. Rolling down from her forehead, a man with half-gray hair, looking distressed, strides over from not far away. Frowning, he takes the water ladle, telling her to go back inside and lie down, and that he will cook. The woman looks at him, and the man hands her half a pancake he traded for. Luck was good today. I traded for a pancake. I ate half and brought the rest back. Eat quickly, you'll recover faster if you eat. Have you eaten? Without a moment's hesitation, the man adds a handful of rice to the pot, squats down to start the fire, and says, "I've eaten." The woman thinks of her own condition and passes the pancake back. "I'm not hungry. You should eat it all. I've been lying down for a while. Lying here for so long. I just want something liquid to drink." The man keeps his head down, adding fuel. "I told you to eat, so eat. How will you get better if you don't eat?" The man lowers his head, his eyes stinging. "If we're full today, what will we eat tomorrow?" He ignores his own body, for that tiny bit of rice was something he had to beg several villagers for. She feels for him, working all day without eating, and he feels for her, suffering by coming to the countryside with him. He grasps her hand. Don't think so much. Just focus on recovering. Tomorrow I'll go find medicine for you. It will definitely cure you. Watching this, Zhou Yao feels uneasy in her heart. On the way back, she asks about the situation of those two. You are somewhat silent. How should you put it? That man, you aren't familiar with him, but you saw him on TV in your previous life. The old man navigated the business world for years, and after passing, donated his entire fortune. In the name of his beloved wife, he established a medical relief public welfare foundation. His greatest regret in life was not protecting his wife, watching her pass away while tormented by illness. Based on your memories, you guess that this illness must be what caused his wife's death. However, you estimate that Madame Yin's illness was mainly caused by malnutrition. In a drafty cowshed, with nothing but thin gruel every day, even the smallest ailment can turn into a chronic disease. You plan to have your wife, this high school student, prepare the medicine and food and use money to invest in this future tycoon. At least I'll have a tutor for the restored college entrance exam. Early the next morning, before the sky had brightened, you opened your eyes, quietly got out of bed, walked to the small bed, carefully picked up your daughter, and gently placed her beside your wife. Carefully cover her with the small quilt. After cooking breakfast for your wife, you close the door from the outside and set off on your way. Today is market day. Although it is still early, there are already many pedestrians on the road. In these times, in the countryside, if a family could have a 28-inch heavy-duty bicycle, then their conditions would be considered quite good. So most people still rely on their two legs to get around. Relying on memories from your previous life, you quickly found that relatively large traditional Chinese medicine pharmacy. That middle-aged man with a square face saw the items you brought out and looked you up and down. Then he picked up the dendrobium and examined it carefully. Seeing that this dendrobium was actually Zhou old wild dendrobium. Each piece was completely intact. He couldn't help but feel surprised. He carefully placed the dendrobium on the counter and asked tentatively, "What price do you want to sell it for?" Hearing that you should name the price, you didn't stand on ceremony and directly gave a number. You knew in your heart that the other party would definitely bargain. Sure enough, once the pharmacy manager heard your price, he had an idea. Knowing that this person was not easy to fool, he glanced at your basket and invited you to the backyard. Two people haggled in the backyard for nearly an hour. Finally, you sold the two dendrobiums, Shou Wu and Velvet Antler, to him. You were also quite satisfied with today's price, leaving the pharmacy with 50 big Unity notes in your pocket. With money in hand, you went to the Stay-Tone store. You wanted to buy a washing machine. Upon asking, the salesperson was stunned. You slapped your forehead. Although washing machines existed now, they were only used in hotels and laundries, and had not entered households. The first domestically produced washing machine was in 1978. It hasn't been produced yet, but you unexpectedly got a coupon for a 9-inch black and white TV. You bought it without a second thought. You also bought some oil, meat, and fabric coupons. The black marketeer saw a big customer and was exceptionally enthusiastic toward you, hearing that you wanted to buy the TV that day. He helped find an acquaintance with a tractor. For 2 yuan, the items could be hauled to the village. You agreed without a second thought. Then, at the Stay-Tone store, you bought a thick red sweater for your wife, pants and leather shoes, and got several sets of brand new small clothes for the child. You also bought a few new cotton quilts. You bought everything you could think of, filling nearly half the tractor. The tractor driver watched in amazement, unable to believe that this young man in ragged clothes was so wealthy to buy so many things in one go. By the time you finished your big shopping, it was already afternoon. At this time, Zhou Yao at home woke up in the morning and saw the child sleeping beside her. You had left at some unknown time. Zhou Yao got out of bed with a heavy and sore body. Seeing that before the man left early, the food had been properly prepared. Golden eggs were laid out on the table, along with sizzling, oily fried meat pieces. If Zhou Yao said her heart didn't flutter, that would be a lie. At midday, around noon, Wang Xuanju led a fresh young girl through the door. Fourth's wife. This is Li Tianchen, an educated youth from the city. She will be staying at your house from now on. Tell the fourth, and prepare a room for her. Zhou Yao was momentarily stunned, suddenly having such a young girl in the house. How could they fit in these 3 small adobe houses? 1 room for the couple. The main hall is for eating. The other room is piled with miscellaneous things. Where is there a place for her to stay? He is not at home. I cannot make the decision. Wang Xuanju smiled so much that the wrinkles on his face bunched up. He waved his hand at Zhou Yao. Not listening to her words at all, he turned to the educated youth beside him and gave a few instructions. Then he turned and left. If not for the sake of that kid, giving him that piece of meat. How could he possibly send such a fresh, young maiden to his house? In this batch of educated youths, there were over 20 people in total. Most were strong young men. Only this one delicate little girl was arranged by him to be here. For the young couple to live with, sending a girl is better than sending a boy. There's nothing to be cautious of with a girl at home at night. And no need to worry about a young, beautiful wife being coveted. The left-behind Li Tianxian carried her canvas bag, looking at these 3 a dilapidated mud house, feeling apprehensive in her heart. The days ahead will likely be harder than for other sent-down youths. The family Hongmei was assigned to seemed to be living quite comfortably. It was a middle-aged couple with 3 children, all dressed smartly and brightly. On the way here, she heard them say that the family she was assigned to, the man was no good at all, drinking, gambling, and even beating his wife. The household was dirt poor, barely able to put food on the table. Before arriving, she thought their words were a bit exaggerated. But looking at it now, what they said was not a lie at all. Only the hostess of this house, wearing old, ill-fitting clothes, was tender and beautiful. Her features were as exquisite as if she stepped out of a painting, not looking like a rural person at all. Zhou Yao noticed that gaze was carefully sizing her up. She looked down at herself, wearing old clothes with patches, then looked at the person before her, wearing a fashionable white summer dress with socks and small leather shoes. Looking bright and polished, she pretended not to mind the scrutinizing look, and spoke, "Please have a seat first. The room is a mess, full of miscellaneous things. I have to wait for my husband to return before I can clear a space for you." After speaking, she turned and went inside, bringing out a thermos to pour a bowl of water for the guest. Zhou Yao nodded somewhat awkwardly and sat down on a bench in the courtyard. She calculated in her heart that she must find every way to quickly get the notice to return to the city for work. She didn't want to stay in this broken place for a single day longer, especially living in the house of a local rogue. She had to be careful in the future, not to let the rogue of this house take advantage of her. Zhou Yao originally planned to just make something simple for lunch. Now that a new sent-down youth had arrived, she had to roll up her sleeves and start preparing the meal. Li Tianxian thought that since she would be living here, she couldn't just eat and stay for free, so she washed her hands and entered the kitchen wanting to help. "Sister-in-law, how about I light the stove?" As she said this and entered the kitchen, she froze. The dilapidated kitchen was actually clean and tidy, and a huge piece of meat was hanging from the beam. Who said this family was too poor to put food on the table? Too poor for food, yet they eat meat. And such a large piece. Zhou Yao was looking down, kneading dough. Hearing Li Tianxian's words, she looked up and said, "No need for your help. If you have nothing to do, just help me watch the child in the courtyard." Hearing this, Li Tianxian nodded and left the kitchen. She came to the small bed and looked at the one lying on it. That child, as fair and clean as a porcelain doll, looking very adorable. She leaned over to tease the child, wondering in her heart, the hostess is about the same age as her, and is so fair and beautiful. Why did she marry so early? How could she fancy such a useless man? And a local rogue at that. Could it be that she was forced by that rogue and had no choice but to marry him? Thinking of this, Li Tianxian felt a surge of apprehension. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became, wondering if she should go to the village chief's house to beg the chief to change her placement. Even if it were poorer, it would be fine, as long as the man of the house was a decent person. In the kitchen, Zhou Yao was busy cooking, unaware that the sent-down youth outside was playing out such a drama in her mind. In a short while, a bowl of steaming noodles was ready. Zhou Yao walked out carrying the noodles and called out, "Comrade, have a bowl of noodles first." Li Tianxian snapped back to her senses, looking at the noodles with oil droplets floating in the large bowl on the table. She was momentarily stunned. She hurriedly said, "My name is Li Tianxian. Sister-in-law, you can just call me Tianxian from now on." Zhou Yao nodded and didn't say much more. Around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, a tractor rumbled into the village and stopped at your door according to the directions you gave. Zhou Yao, who was husking corn in the courtyard, suddenly heard a noise outside and hurriedly put down her work. She stood up and walked to the door. Just then, she saw you jump nimbly off the tractor, wondering in her heart why he came back on this sputtering tractor. Before she could ask for details, the tractor driver shouted at the top of his lungs, "Young man, can your house fit all these things?" Saying this, he walked from the front of the vehicle to the back, moving the television bit by bit to the side, for fear of damaging it. In one swift step, he went up and carried the television down from the vehicle. He grinned at the tractor driver and said, "There will be plenty of space in the future." Zhou Yao, standing beside him, was stunned by the scene before her. She asked blankly, "Did you buy all of this?" Her voice was filled with disbelief. So many things, plus a television. How much money and how many coupons must this cost? Seeing the fair and beautiful face of your wife, with her eyes staring blankly, you stepped forward and touched her cheek. In your heart, you understood that she was distressed over the money, but you didn't care about this small amount of money at all. You just wanted your wife to enjoy a blessed life with you and never let her suffer again. You leaned close to Zhou Yao's ear and whispered, "I'll tell you the details later. Stand aside for now, so you don't get hit. I'll unload the things first." Hearing your words, Zhou Yao moved to the side like a puppet, watching the items being unloaded one by one. Piling up like a small mountain, she felt so much regret in her heart. Had she known it would be like this, she would have come to the city with you, holding the child. How much money must this cost? How could he be so bad at managing money? Where did the money and coupons come from? Who among ordinary people could afford a television? Even the electricity bill alone would be expensive. Such a spendthrift. At this moment, Li Tianxian, standing in the corner holding the infant, stared intently at the tall man. With broad shoulders and long legs, he was the village hoodlum. She had originally thought you were ugly and crude. She never expected you to have deep features and a handsome appearance. In all her life, she had rarely seen such a handsome man. Her heart beat wildly and incessantly. Now Li Tianxian finally understood why a woman as beautiful as a flower like Zhou Yao had married so early. It turned out this man was even more handsome than Wang Xinggang in the movies. Once the things were unloaded, you took 2 yuan out of your pocket and handed it to the tractor driver. The driver took the money, waved his hand, and drove the tractor away. You began moving things into the yard again. Your wife wanted to help, but you wouldn't let her, telling her to sit and rest. You didn't even notice there was a strange woman in the house. Zhao Zhengxing heard the news and rushed over, seeing so many things piled at his brother's door. He was completely stunned. This lazy fellow. Where did he get so much money to buy all these things? He was so poor he was practically rattling, and there was nothing in the house to sell. Could he have sold the child? Thinking of this, Zhao Zhengxing couldn't help but quicken his pace. Rushing to the door, at a glance, he saw his little niece in the female youth's arms, and only then did his heart settle. Zhao Zhengxing didn't say a word, and silently helped move the items into the yard. Looking at that heavy iron lump, images and sounds would emerge once powered. A colony of ants were fighting on it. It was quite a spectacle, just like watching a movie. He circled it a few times in curiosity, but was too shy to reach out and touch it. He heard this thing was very precious, costing several hundred yuan. This was the television that city people often talked about. He really didn't expect his own brother to actually bring one back. The only one in the entire village. After the things were properly arranged, Zhao Zhengxing pulled you to the yard entrance and asked, "Where did you get so much money?" Unhurriedly, you patted your chest and said, "This is all from hunting, selling the game at the black market." You didn't tell your eldest brother about the dendrobium. It wasn't that you didn't trust him, but dendrobium grows on steep cliffs. Even if you told him, he wouldn't be of much help. If the news leaked, it might cut off your own source of wealth. When it gets warmer next spring, you will lead your eldest and second brothers to some good harvesting spots on the mountain and tell them the tricks. After that, it would depend on their own luck. Zhao Zhengxing wanted to advise you to just farm properly, but looking at his own brother before him, whose eyes were sparkling, revealing a shrewdness and depth never seen before. It was as if he had become a different person, making him, as the eldest brother, feel as though he hardly recognized him. Thinking it was rare for your brother to visit, you revealed your intention to build a house to him, wanting to ask for his help, seeing the daily wage of 1 yuan offered to him. Zhao Zhengxing took a puff of his cigarette and said, "If you didn't act recklessly, I wouldn't mind doing it myself for you. Why would I want any wages? But building a house is no joke. It costs a lot of money. Big brother, I have the money. I'll pay the wages as agreed. Even brothers should keep clear accounts. Please help me find a skilled master craftsman and use better materials. Let's try to move into the new house before winter." Zhao Zhengxing nodded, thinking that the fourth brother just wanted to take those 3 thatched rooms and renovate them a bit. Who would have thought he'd be bold enough to build 2 stories? The reason you handed all these matters over to your big brother was simply because you were frantically busy. You were thinking that you must harvest all the dendrobium before winter. If you come across wild herbs like Shou, you could sell them for money, and if you happen to run into Sika deer and get some velvet antler or deer penis, that would be a huge windfall. Seeing that it was still early, the 2 brothers agreed and went to Wang Xuanzhu to plan. In this economic era, building a house and buying bricks required a permit slip. As the village head, Wang Xuanzhu had unrivaled power in these times. You gave him a pack of Dukianmen cigarettes and slipped him 1 yuan, and smoothly obtained the permit to buy bricks. With the permit, you headed straight to the commune's brick factory to order the bricks for the house. Zhao Zhengxing was puzzled. Just how many bricks are needed? "Fourth brother, how thick are you planning to make the walls? Why order so many bricks?" You told him you wanted to build 2 stories. Zhao Zhengxing watched as you took out 2 10-yuan bills and handed them to the factory owner without blinking. Zhao Zhengxing grimaced in pain for the money. Then he heard you say the remaining balance will be paid once the bricks are delivered home. Zhao Zhengxing's eyes widened, finding it absolutely unbelievable. Those were 10-yuan bills. Not scrap paper, just keeping them casually in a pocket, without fear of losing them. Zhao Zhengxing realized that his gambling addict fourth brother now had quite an air about him in front of strangers, looking more like a leader than the factory director, standing there with a natural authority. If he changed into a blue cloth jacket without patches, people would believe he was the son of some high official. If not for the mole on his neck and the one on his hand, and the scars from previous brawls, Zhao Zhengxing would have suspected if the fourth brother had been secretly replaced by someone else. On the way home, Zhao Zhengxing felt like he was floating. Feeling dazed, the fourth brother had certainly changed, but why did he always feel something was strange? As they approached home, you took 5 10-yuan bills from your pocket and handed them over. "Big brother, besides the wood, please help me arrange the other materials." Zhao Zhengxing reached out to take them, but then felt his hands were a bit dirty and wiped them on the hem of his clothes. Before taking the money, he carefully tucked the money into an inner pocket, fearing he might accidentally lose it. Zhao Zhengxing said sincerely to you, "So much money. You really trust your big brother. I will definitely get this done perfectly for you." You nodded. "My own biological brother. Why wouldn't I trust you? If not for the care from big brother and sister-in-law and the grievances your wife suffered in the past, your daughter might not have been born. Or you might have ruined everything yourself." In the Zhao family's main room, Zhou Yao was tidying up the things you bought. She took a square cloth from the cabinet and carefully draped it over the television, fearing a bit of dust would dirty the TV. If you asked her why buy such a thing, the village has frequent power outages, and you need to set up an antenna. When there's no signal, the screen is full of static. But seeing how excited you were, she didn't want to complain about you spending money recklessly. She discovered you bought things for her and your daughter again. There were women's sweaters, pants, leather shoes, and several sets of small clothes for the daughter, the coat you bought her in town last time. She hadn't even worn it yet, not daring to wear it, and yet you bought her more clothes. But seeing your care for the mother and child, Zhou Yao was very happy. She picked up the soft and thick cotton quilt, preparing to put it in the chest, and couldn't help but shed tears. This was even better than the new cotton quilt she had when she married in. Once everything was tidied up, Zhou Yao realized that this man hadn't bought anything for himself. But his shirt was covered in patch upon patch, and his shoes even had holes in them. Li Tianxian helped by holding the daughter, staring longingly at those new clothes, fidgeting with impatience, like a cat seeing a fish. That heart-neck sweater is the trendiest style in the city. She wanted to buy one when she visited them, but her parents simply wouldn't agree, spending half a month's salary on a sweater. Seeing the clothes she wanted but couldn't afford. And there was more than one here. Li Tianxian was filled with envy and jealousy. Zhou Yao's husband is quite a handsome man, and he's very generous with spending on his wife. Moreover, he knows how to cherish people. When moving things, he didn't want her to lift a finger, fearing she might get tired, cherishing her like the apple of his eye. How could the village describe such a good man? As a gambling, lazy man. It's simply nonsense. You strode through the door from outside and saw a strange young woman standing there holding a child, smilingly looking at your wife. Is this your friend? After Li Tianxian noticed your gaze, her eyelids lowered slightly, not daring to meet your eyes, although she prided herself on being a city person and looked down on these country folk. But from the moment this man arrived by tractor, returning covered in dust from his journey, although she had been standing right beside him, his eyes and heart were only for the young sister-in-law, with a living person standing right here. He hadn't glanced at her once from start to finish. Zhou Yao was busy with the work at hand. Upon hearing your question, she finally realized that there was an extra person in the house. That female youth had been silent all along. While she was preoccupied with tidying up the things you had bought, she had completely forgotten about her. Zhou Yao quickly, with an apologetic look, took the child from Li Tianxian's arms and said to you, "This is the youth the village chief brought. An educated youth sent to the countryside. She said she wants to stay at our house temporarily. Do you think we should tidy up the west room and clear it out for her to stay in?" Her words were consultative. Although you said she was the boss of the house, she still didn't dare to decide on her own, fearing she might be blamed, hearing that a stranger wanted to stay. Your brow unconsciously furrowed slightly. You weren't willing to have a stranger interfering in your little life with your wife. But when you saw your wife's expectant gaze, the words of refusal simply wouldn't come out. Fearing she would think you were disregarding her wishes, you didn't say a word. First pulled your wife into the inner room, took off your outer jacket, then took the remaining money from selling dendrobium from a hidden pocket and gave it to her. Then you took the child from Zhou Yao's arms and played with them, and told her about your plan to build a house. Zhou Yao took the money from your hand, looking at those brand new 10 yuan notes. She felt a bit incredulous. After buying so many things, there was actually still this much money left. 2 dendrobium plants, 1 Shou Wu, and some deer antler and deer penis were worth this much money when you mentioned the idea of building a house. Zhou Yao quickly put the money away. Under your eager gaze, she carefully hid the money securely, then fell into a brief silence. If they didn't build a house, with the money earned these 2 times, it would be enough for the 3 of them to live in plenty for several years, a stable and peaceful life. But if they really built a house, this money would probably be far from enough, and they would end up deeply in debt. As for her brother's family, they had helped her family a lot these past 2 years. Now they also have a child to raise. How could she have the nerve to ask for money again? While Zhou Yao was pondering, you seemed to see through her thoughts. Suddenly kissed her fair and tender cheek. Wife, don't worry about the money. I've got this. Just rest well at home. Don't overwork yourself. The sudden soft and warm sensation on her cheek made Zhou Yao's face turn completely red instantly. She gave you a flirtatious glare and reminded you in a low voice, "What are you doing? There are people outside. Have you no shame? Your skin is as thick as a copper wall." You just looked at Zhou Yao with a grin. In your previous life, you were very wealthy. There was no occasion you hadn't attended. As you spoke, you leaned down again and lowered your head to Zhou Yao's plump red lips, giving them a gentle bite, looking at your wife's fair, pinkish cheeks. Your heart melted along with it, even though she's already a mother. Why is she still so naive? You stopped teasing her, returning to the main topic. She said, "Big brother will order materials tomorrow. In case he doesn't have enough money and asks you, don't forget to give it to him." Zhou Yao nodded silently, but she felt somewhat uneasy in her heart. She remembered what the next-door neighbor said about the matter between Big Brother and second sister-in-law. Looking at Big Brother again, she felt uncomfortable inside. You noticed your wife's odd expression, leaned in close to her cheek and asked, "What's wrong, wifey? If something's wrong, don't keep it inside." Zhou Yao thought for a moment, but still shook her head, saying nothing. Seeing that your wife didn't want to talk, you didn't press her further. Over there, Li Tianchen stood in the main hall, faintly hearing Zhou Yao's reminder that there was still someone outside. Her face turned as red as a monkey's backside. She walked softly to the middle of the courtyard, breathing in the fresh air. As if possessed by some strange force, she stopped her steps to find the village chief to change her lodging. The master of this house didn't seem as wretched as the villagers outside rumored. Just now, while the young sister-in-law was organizing things, she stood there holding the child. She saw everything clearly. Most of those items were for household use, and clothes for the child and the young sister-in-law. Yet she saw nothing that belonged to a man. While Li Tianchen stood dazed in the courtyard, the little daughter swaying in your arms had already fallen fast asleep. Her delicate little face looked peaceful. You turned gently placed the sleeping little princess on the bed, carefully pulled up the quilt. Then Zhou Yao walked out of the room and said to Li Tianchen, "You'll have to bear with it tonight and make do for a while. There are too many things piled up in the west room. Your big brother might not be able to clean it all at once." Hearing Zhou Yao's words, Li Tianchen turned her head, seeing her rosy cheeks. She couldn't help but think of what she'd faintly heard, the conversation between the couple in the room. Her face felt hot, and she quickly avoided her gaze. "I'm not inconvenienced. Then I'll trouble you and Big Brother," Li Tianchen said hurriedly. Zhou Yao smiled and shook her head at Li Tianchen, saying, "As long as you don't mind that our family is poor." Saying this, she bent down, wanting to move the daughter's small wooden bed to her own east room. Seeing this, you rushed over to help. Zhou Yao smiled, turned and went to the west room, also wanting to help clean up. You, who were working shirtless, were repeatedly asked by your wife and had to put on a purple undershirt. Those muscular arms were exposed. Exuding a sense of strength, the undershirt covered his broad back. those scratch marks of varying depths. You had no idea why your wife wanted you to wear the shirt. So you just carried a few bamboo rakes, planning to move them to the courtyard. After just a few moments of work, you saw your wife coming in with her sleeves rolled up. You quickly spoke up to stop her. "Wifey, you don't need to help with this. It's very dusty. Go stay out in the courtyard." As you spoke, seeing that Zhou Yao wouldn't listen, you grew anxious, put down the fence in your hand, and pushed her out. You felt so much heartache for her, with so much dust. How could you let her come in to help? If it weren't for the thought of building the house next, and having a group of men coming and going, you wouldn't have let this female youth stay in the house. But then again, there were benefits to keeping Li Tianxian. When you went up the mountain to hunt and gather dendrobium, she could keep your wife company and chat. To relieve her boredom, Li Tianxian saw you push Zhou Yao out. Couldn't help but cover her mouth and tease. "Sister-in-law, big brother really dotes on you, haha." Hearing Li Tianxian's words, a blush appeared on Zhou Yao's face. She smiled shyly and didn't respond. This man has truly changed. As long as he is home, he doesn't let her touch any work. Even the hot water for washing her body at night, he boils it and brings it into the room for her. These days, she truly felt carefully cherished. It was just too good, to the point that it felt somewhat surreal, even a bit apprehensive. Zhou Yao feared that once the novelty wore off, you would go back to how you were before, making her spend every day anxious and insecure. Her mind was now in a state of high tension every day, greedily hoping these good days could last a bit longer. So she was exceptionally careful in her words and actions, fearing she might make you unhappy. During mealtime, watching him hand the white flour bun to her while he took big bites of a coarse grain bun. He was the one who complained coarse grain buns tasted bad. He was also the one who asked her to make white flour buns, but once they were made, he didn't eat a single bite, leaving them all for her. In truth, she didn't mind what she ate. As long as he could settle down and live peacefully and stop fooling around outside, she would be satisfied. Zhou Yao still couldn't figure it out. Why you had suddenly become so kind. It wasn't that he hadn't done reckless things while drunk before, and apologized to her while hugging her after sobering up, or knelt on the ground making solemn oaths. After every drunken rampage, he would indeed restrain himself for a bit, but that only lasted 2 or 3 days, before returning to his old self and continuing to mess around outside. She had never seen him like he was these past few days, cooking and boiling water, and even soothing the child. He had even bought all the clothes and shoes the child needed. Zhou Yao saw everything clearly in her heart, constantly reminding herself to stay clear-headed and not fall headlong into this sweet whirlpool, in case she woke up from this dream later and reality was different from now. Then what would she do? But you didn't know the twists and turns in your wife's heart. As dusk began to fall, you finally tidied up the west room. That room was a mud-tile house, piled high with miscellaneous items, and uninhabited. The newspapers on the wall were rotten like spider webs, crumbling at a touch. Although it had been cleaned, there was still a lot of dust inside. You deftly used wooden boards to build a small bed, thus completing the task your wife had assigned. Seeing you walk out drenched in sweat, Zhou Yao quickly picked up a towel and handed it over. "Quickly wipe yourself. Dinner will be ready soon." You didn't reach out to take it. Your tall and straight body bent slightly, bringing it closer, that rugged and handsome face to your wife's, saying with the warm breath of your nostrils, "Wife, will you wipe it for me?" Hearing your words, Zhou Yao subconsciously glanced at Li Tianxian, who was carrying things into the room. After she went inside, she stood on tiptoe and wiped the sweat from your forehead, not forgetting to remind you, there's an outsider in the house. From now on, when you get up for the toilet in the morning, don't go shirtless in just big boxers anymore, lest the young girls see and feel shy. Your dark, piercing eyes stared at your wife who was so close, seeing her wipe so carefully, and nag about these trivial matters. Your heart felt warm, although you felt it was a bit awkward not to be shirtless in your own home, but seeing your wife's serious expression, you curled your lips and gave a light, fleeting kiss on Zhou Yao's rosy lips, agreeing readily. I'll do as you say. Zhou Yao was caught off guard by this sudden intimacy, leaving her blushing deeply. It would be one thing if it were just the two of them, but now there was an unmarried young lady in the house. Truly shameless. Zhou Yao said to you with a flushed face. Stop dawdling. Go wash your hands and eat. And she turned back to the kitchen. You watched your wife's retreating figure and grinned, a satisfied smile beaming on your handsome face. You walked to the side of the well and drew up a bucket of cold water, splashing it on your face. Drenched in sweat, your body felt sticky and very uncomfortable. You looked around. You were alone in the courtyard. You took off your undershirt and poured the cold water from the bucket over your head. It felt incredibly refreshing. Unexpectedly, Li Tianqian happened to come out of the room and witnessed this scene, seeing the shirtless man with his back to her, revealing a robust physique, balanced muscles, well-defined lines, with a few scratch marks on them. Li Tianqian's cheeks burned as she watched. Blushing, she turned and went back inside. This mud house had no soundproofing. It was dark and dusty everywhere. Li Tianqian couldn't stand living there for another day, hearing the splashing sound of water. Zhou Yao walked out carrying the dishes and immediately saw you shirtless, your body soaking wet, as if you had just been fished out of the water. Suddenly, a surge of anger rose in her heart. She placed the dishes on the stone table in the courtyard, stepped forward and pulled your arm toward the house, complaining as she pulled. It's so cold out. What if you get sick? You let your wife pull you into the house. Listening to her complaints, your heart felt warm, knowing she was truly worried about you. Once inside the inner room, Zhou Yao picked up the baby's small blanket, stood on tiptoe, and carefully wiped the water from your head. She was so focused she barely blinked, yet still kept scolding you. Lower your head. Hurry up. She didn't notice at all that you were grinning like a fool while staring at her. Hearing your wife's words, you quickly spread your long legs apart and obediently lowered your head, letting your wife dry your hair. Wife, wear your new clothes tomorrow. I want to see you in them. As soon as those words came out, Zhou Yao's hands paused slightly. But she said nothing, seeing that your hair was almost dry. She moved behind you and wiped the water from your back inch by inch. Looking at the marks on your back, her face suddenly grew hot. She clearly hadn't been like this before. Thinking of this, Zhou Yao's heartbeat became chaotic. She tossed the blanket into your arms and said, Wipe the front yourself. Once you're dry, change your pants and come eat. Zhou Yao lifted the cloth curtain and came out, just as Li Tianqian came out of the west room. The two looked at each other and smiled, neither saying a word. There were only 3 mud brick rooms, and the place was tiny. Whatever was said in the east room could be heard clearly from the west room. Li Tianqian couldn't sit still, nor could she stand comfortably. Her whole body felt uneasy. If this happened at night, wouldn't she feel like she was being roasted over a fire? You changed into another pair of pants, put on a gray shirt, and strode out. You sat down on the stone stool beside your wife and glanced over the stone table. The scrambled eggs from the morning were almost untouched, and none of the 8 pieces of meat were missing. You frowned and looked at your wife. You didn't eat this morning. Zhou Yao had just picked up her chopsticks when she looked up and saw your dark expression and furrowed brow. Her heart suddenly tightened, her hand trembled, and the chopsticks clattered to the ground. In that instant, she broke down. Had he shown his true colors this quickly, she had thought he could hold out a little longer this time. The dream had ended so quickly. She put down the other chopstick, avoiding your gaze, and took a deep breath. I ate half a bun and 2 pieces of egg. Her voice was calm, but her hands were clutching her worn jacket tightly, and her whole body was trembling. The sound of the chopsticks falling snapped you back to your senses, realizing something was wrong. You looked closer. Zhou Yao's eyes were red, wet like a heart drenched by rain. Your heart tightened, and you instantly panicked. You had only felt distressed that she was reluctant to eat. You hadn't expected your tone to be too harsh and frighten her. You reached out to hug her, but she dodged away, making you panic even more. A man over 6 feet tall crouched in front of his wife, his face full of panic. Wife, I was just a little anxious. I really didn't mean to be harsh with you. As soon as your tone softened, Zhou Yao couldn't hold back her grievance. and her tears fell one after another. She had truly been terrified just now, thinking you had turned back into that violent-tempered demon who would hit people. Your heart ached terribly. You lifted her up by the waist and quickly carried her into the east room. Li Tianchen had just sat down on the stone stool, looking confused. What just happened? Now she was the only one left in the courtyard. Inside, you looked at the person in your arms with heartache, her eyes red from crying, the tip of her delicate nose flushed. Your heart felt as if it were being twisted by a knife. You lowered your head and kissed her eyelids, then spoke softly. "Wife, I'm sorry. I was really wrong. I was just afraid you couldn't bear to eat. And got anxious, so my tone came out harsh. I'm busy outside all day. And can't always watch you eat. I got worried and spoke too harshly." Zhou Yao gradually felt a little better. She felt she had been a bit too much just now. Recently, being pampered and protected by him, she had become spoiled. Now that everything had been said, she felt even more embarrassed. Her fair fingers tightly gripped the shirt on his chest. Her eyelids drooped slightly, biting her lower lip, without saying a word. Then you suddenly said without warning, "Wife, what's wrong with you?" Following the direction of his finger, Zhou Yao finally noticed that she must be leaking milk. Before she could answer, thinking of the crucian carp tofu soup and venison cooked recently, you asked again, "Is our daughter getting enough to eat lately?" Zhou Yao's fair face suddenly turned red. Like a ripe persimmon, she broke free from his embrace, turning her back to you. "Get out first." Her voice trembling slightly, drinking crucian carp soup every day lately. She wondered if it really worked. The child has been exclusively breastfeeding these past 2 days, no longer drinking formula, but even so, the milk supply was still abundant. It was painfully engorged during the day. Last night, this shameless man had some. Only today did she feel less uncomfortable, but she was still leaking milk. Her face flushed red, looking down as she unbuttoned her clothes, completely unaware that you were staring intently at her movements, watching eagerly with longing eyes. Just as Zhou Yao took off her outer garment, she discovered that this shameless man was staring at her. She was instantly embarrassed and annoyed. "What are you doing? Get out quickly, I need to fix my clothes." You had no intention of leaving at all. Instead, you leaned in closer. "Wife, the baby is asleep. You're so uncomfortable from the engorgement. Let me help." Li Tianchen sat on the stone bench outside, resting her chin on one hand. The sky had turned dark, the stars and moon had appeared, and the couple still hadn't come out. She didn't dare go in to check rashly. She could only wait. After a long time, the two of them came out of the house. Li Tianchen saw the young sister-in-law's eyes were moist. Her cheeks were crimson. Her lips were bright red and glistening. She must have been coaxed. Seeing Li Tianchen staring at her, thinking of what just happened, her face burned intensely. She sat down and handed chopsticks to Li Tianchen. "Let's eat." Then she handed another pair to the man beside her. After you sat down, you didn't spare a single glance for Li Tianchen. You placed a fine flour bun in your wife's hand and started munching on a coarse grain bun yourself, thinking about finding time to visit the reservoir to catch some crucian carp to nourish your wife. How could Zhou Yao know what the man was thinking? She worried Li Tianchen might feel awkward and passed a fine flour bun over. "Eat, don't be polite. Treat this as your own home." Li Tianchen took a small bite, wondering to herself whether this family was poor or rich. If they were poor, why eat fine flour buns? The dishes were scrambled eggs and meat. These conditions weren't inferior to those in the city. This morning, the village chief's family ate black corn buns with pickled radish. If they were rich, why live in a 3-room adobe house? Aside from the TV bought today, there wasn't even a piece of decent furniture. The bed she slept on was just a few wooden boards thrown together. When she made the bed, she feared it would collapse if she turned over. Oh right, yesterday she heard him tell the tractor driver he wanted to build a house. Wouldn't that mean this old house would be demolished? Then there would be nowhere to stay. Then why did he still keep her here? It was obvious that in this man's eyes, other than the young sister-in-law, there was room for no one else. He clearly didn't like her staying here. While she was lost in thought, the sound of a baby crying came from the house. The next second you stood up and told Zhou Yao to keep eating, and strode into the house, turned on the light and picked up their daughter who had woken up in the crib. Zhou Yao put down her chopsticks, reached out to take the baby. You dodged her. You eat first. I'm not hungry yet. I'll eat later. Zhou Yao naturally knew. He said he wasn't hungry just so she could eat first. Coming back from outside and being busy clearing clutter. How could he not be hungry? But she didn't expose him. Pick up chopsticks and continue eating. Li Tianchen lowered her eyes, nibbling on a steamed bun in small bites, secretly observing the couple's interaction from the corner of her eye, unconsciously comparing it with her own family. When her two brothers return from work, they almost never hold the children. When children cry, the sisters-in-law are the ones to comfort them first, holding a child in one hand, struggling to eat with the other. But this eldest brother before her walks back and forth in the yard holding and soothing the child. She finds it unbelievable. Zhou Yao quickly finished her meal, took the child from the man's arms, and went back into the room. As soon as she left, Li Tianchen secretly looked up, looking at the young man opposite her, seeing him taking big bites of the bun with eggs. Not a single expression on his handsome face, exuding coldness and detachment, a completely different face compared to when the young sister-in-law was there. Li Tianchen felt a bit uneasy watching this. Restless and uncomfortable, stammering, she said, "Brother, I'm full." She cleared the bowls and chopsticks, carried them into the kitchen, washed them quickly, and returned to the west room. Didn't dare to come out again. The sky turned completely dark. You sat alone in the yard, eating the remaining 4-course grain buns. Only felt full after drinking the noodle soup. Then you boiled a pot of hot water, carried the basin back into the room. Wife, remember to wipe yourself down. I'm going to the restroom. You placed the basin on the stand and walked out. Zhou Yao closed the door, took off her clothes, bathed with hot water, just finished dressing after the bath, faintly heard some movement behind the house. She thought she had misheard. The next second, a man's voice came from outside. "Dear little sister, are you bathing?" The hair on Zhou Yao's body stood on end, screamed loudly. Outside, you had just pulled up your belt. Hearing the scream, quickly walked out, caught the person who leaped into your arms. Holding her tightly, you looked down and asked, "What happened?" Zhou Yao wrapped her arms tightly around his waist, her body trembling. Behind the house, someone was there just now. You raised your pitch-black eyes, looked beyond the courtyard wall, sure enough saw a head, hurriedly running away. In an instant, your deep eyes were filled with chilling anger. You withdrew your gaze, looking at the person in your arms wearing only undergarments, picked her up by the waist, placed her on the bed, came out of the bedroom, told Li Tianchen, who was standing at the door of the west room, "Help me watch her, I'm going out for a bit." You said nothing more, striding out of the courtyard with your long legs. Your tall and straight figure disappeared into the dark night. At Lazy's house at the east end of the village, the next-door neighbor heard Lazy's miserable wails and the muffled sounds of fists hitting a body. Listening until their heart trembled, they all knew you were a reckless person, a ruthless person to the core. Not sure how Lazy provoked you. Hearing these sounds, you had used a heavy hand, truly afraid the person would be beaten to death. "Fourth brother, I was wrong. I just went to see the youth Li Tianchen. But I really didn't see anything." Hearing Lazy beg for mercy, you directly dislocated his jaw. "What nonsense are you talking? Didn't you crave meat and go to eat some?" "Fourth brother, I was wrong." Lazy didn't even have the strength to crawl up and kneel, truly afraid of being beaten to death by you. For a moment, you really wanted to cripple him, but thinking of Zhou Yao and your daughter, you weren't as ruthless. Zhou Yao lay on the bed, not knowing how much time had passed, heard the splashing sound of water in the yard, realized that you had returned, taking a cold bath. After 10 odd minutes, heard the sound of the door opening and closing. In the dark, you thought she had fallen asleep, stepped lightly into the room. Just as you were about to get into bed in the dark, a voice came from the bed. "You're back." Zhou Yao reached out and turned on the light. The room lit up. You stopped your movement, seeing the person on the bed, propping up her head with one hand, jet black hair scattered across her snow-white shoulders and neck. Your gaze darkened, stepped onto the bed, reached out to turn off the light. In the darkness, "It's okay now, wife. Go to sleep." Before you returned, He didn't dare sleep, fearing you'd hit him too hard and kill him, and fearing the villagers' gossip. He was terrified, curling up in your arms like a kitten, cheek pressed against his firm, hot chest, listening to the strong heartbeat as the sobbing slowly stopped. He didn't dare cry loudly, for fear of waking the daughter. Looking at such a wife, you felt you hadn't hit him hard enough. You thought that with your notoriety, the village thugs wouldn't dare. But you didn't expect someone to still have wicked intentions. But after today, those with such intentions should be quiet now. Looking at the man, fatigue showing on his face, thinking of how he's been leaving early and returning late lately, digging and selling dendrobium, giving the money to her, protecting and coaxing her. He had truly changed. In the darkness, Zhou Yao grew tired of crying and fell into a daze of sleep. Listening to the steady breathing of the person beside her, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, Zhou Yao was awakened from her sleep by voices outside. In the courtyard, sister-in-law Zhou added a handful of white sugar to the boiled water, pouring water for the workers one by one. In these times, sugar was a rarity, and no family usually dared to buy it. Cao Fengji drank a bowl of sugar water, leaned in toward sister-in-law Zhou, and whispered, "Sister-in-law, yesterday, why did it seem like your brother's wife was shouting at home?" Sister-in-law Zhou put down the kettle, looking at the gossip-hungry Cao Fengji. "Your house is 2 li away from Zhou Seas, and you still heard it. What, do you have nothing to do at night?" Crouching under the young couple's window to eavesdrop, Cao Fengji smiled, not answering but thinking of last night, hearing that you beat Lazy from the East End half to death, and even broke one of his legs. Coincidentally, this city wife is restless, guessing that this wife must have been cheating behind your back. She couldn't hold it in and wanted to gossip. Sister-in-law Zhou didn't bother with her, carrying the kettle to pour water for others. Coming to your side, she gave you a meaningful look and whispered, "Go check on Zhou Yao." Usually at this time, she would have been awake long ago. Hope she hasn't fallen ill from the shock. You who were moving bricks stopped your work. When you woke up this morning, she was indeed still sleeping. Now it's already 10 o'clock. You lifted the curtain and entered the bedroom. As you opened the door and entered, Zhou Yao woke up. You instinctively pulled her into your arms, turning your face to the person in your arms and saying, "Now that you're awake, change your clothes first, and I'll bring the food in for you to eat." Your voice was slightly husky. The curtains were still drawn, and it was very noisy outside. Zhou Yao couldn't help but ask, "What's going on in the courtyard? Why is it so noisy?" "Renovating the courtyard wall. It's a mess." "Wife, don't come out yet. There's still work to be done outside, moving bricks over here." "Then why haven't you let me go yet?" "Just a little longer," you replied with a smile, not only not letting go, but instead hugging her tighter, saying to her, "Give me a kiss, and I'll let you go. Stop messing around and let me go. There are people outside." "When was I messing around? You're my wife, and you're not even willing to give me a kiss. Do you not like me anymore?" His tone carried a hint of aggrieved aggression. Zhou Yao wanted to explain, but in the end she said nothing, leaning forward to lightly peck his cheek. "All right, now let me go." You having been kissed, a spark flashing in your beautiful eyes, happily cupped her small face and kissed her. "Wife, I really like you. Let me go, there really are people outside. I'm bored staying in the room. I want to go out and help." Without a second thought, you flatly refused. "If you're bored, I'll let sister-in-law come in to talk with you." Zhou Yao knew there was no hope of going out to help, seeing that you wouldn't let her out the door. She went back to the bedroom board to play with their daughter. Because many people helped, the courtyard wall was finished by 4 p.m. that afternoon. The 2-meter-high wall was topped with shards of glass. Ordinary people without a ladder would find it hard to climb a 2-meter wall, let alone when the wall is covered in glass shards. Building the courtyard wall before the house is a first. Behind your house, Cao Fengji giggled. Last night when I came out to use the restroom, I saw lazy from Zhou Yao's room. Sneaking out. I'm afraid they've already done that. No way if it's true. Zhou Yao is too shameless. Zhang Hongxia exclaimed. The two sisters-in-law whispered, making faces at each other, looking at Zhou Yao with disdain. This scene was seen by you, who had been watching them. Every word was captured by your ears. These two women really need a beating. My uncle's 2 daughters-in-law are actually this kind of trash. Claiming they came to help, but they clearly just came for free treats. Did you see it? Cao Fengji even brought a tea mug. And her pockets were bulging. It seems she packed plenty of snacks for the helpers. Wondering how to deal with them, Cao Fengji and Zhang Hongxia must be dealt with once and for all. To avoid further trouble, after dinner, you strolled over to Uncle Wang Dashan's house. Wang Dashan and his 2 sons hadn't split the household. They all lived together. When you arrived, the Wang family was eating. Seeing you arrive, everyone was quite surprised. Zhao Kun, have you eaten? Liu Shukin stuffed a mouthful of rice. Seeing you walking towards her, didn't think much of it. Step by step, you approached Cao Fengji. You suddenly grabbed her hair. Your action stunned everyone present. Accompanied by Cao Fengji's scream, they finally reacted. Wang He stood up abruptly. Zhao Kun, what madness is this? You gave a cold smile. What madness? Ask your wife. Cao Fengji never expected that the news would reach your ears so quickly, that you would come so soon. You began to list Cao Fengji's faults. Liu Shukin and Wang Dashan's faces turned grim. This isn't a daughter-in-law they married in. She is a jinx. Usually, they feared their son would follow her and pick up bad habits. They repeatedly warned him to keep his distance. Yet this woman dared to actively slander others. Cao Fengji cursed you under her breath, but didn't know how to explain herself. Zhang Hongxia stood up. Is there some kind of misunderstanding here? Zhao Kun, let go first. Cao Fengji is your cousin-in-law, after all. Zhang Hongxia, you're not any better, damn it. Sit down. Look at these birds of a feather. Zhang Hongxia felt awkward. Looking at her husband, Wang Yang remained silent, clearly not wanting to get involved in this mess. You raised your hand and slapped Cao Fengji across the face. This is for your nonsense. I'll beat that mouth of yours. Cao Fengji was stunned by the blow. Completely unexpected that he would dare. No one from the Wang family stopped you. You slapped Cao Fengji 6 times before stopping. Finally let her go. Cao Fengji saw stars. Couldn't even stand steady. She stumbled and fell against Wang He, only to be pushed away harshly by her own husband. Wang Dashan said gloomily, you asked for it. Serves you right. Cao Fengji, are you brainless? Why can't you stand to see Zhao Kun and his wife happy? You dare to say such things. Clearly trying to sow discord. I didn't say those things. No one felt sorry for her even after being beaten, except for her stubborn denial. Cao Fengji had nowhere to turn. You didn't say those things. Do you dare to swear it? Cao Fengji was too naive. She was no match for a cunning person like you. If you lie, your whole family will die. May your parents die a miserable death. May your children die a miserable death. These 2 sentences shut Cao Fengji's mouth. She felt guilty, stammering, unable to speak. What exactly happened? Everyone understood now. You looked at everyone. They didn't dare to act. Zhou Yao finally felt relieved. Heaven knows she didn't even dare to breathe just now. Fearing this person would suddenly turn on her, seeing your wife's breathing slowly stabilize. You finally felt at ease. It seems you'll need to have heart-to-heart talks with your wife every night. And take her to the city to relax. But knowing your wife certainly wouldn't be happy. Afraid that once in town, with a turn of the head, you would sell your daughter. But you feel it's better to take your wife out for some fresh air now. Wife, do you want to come with me for a stroll at the foot of the mountain? I'll catch a quail for you to have a treat. Zhou Yao wanted to go a bit. It wasn't that she craved quail. It's just that lately, this man doesn't let her work in the fields for work points anymore, telling her to recover her health at home. And just take care of the baby. She went back to work the day after giving birth. Back then, he didn't care about her. Now he's suddenly become caring. She didn't know what benefit he gave Wang Xuanzhu. Two laborers in the house, neither are working the fields, yet Wang Xuanzhu doesn't come to press them, seeing that his wife was clearly interested. But still hesitating, her gaze wavered among the people in the courtyard. Knowing his wife was worried that if they left, the things at home wouldn't be safe. You laugh and say it's fine. Wait a moment. After saying that, he carried the child out of the kitchen, didn't know what he told them. Everyone in the main hall came out. You even drove Li Tianchen out. Li Tianchen actually really wanted to follow this family of three, to go see the foot of the mountain. She heard there were tigers on the mountain. Their group of educated youths didn't dare go near. But seeing that they weren't welcome, she could only wander aimlessly in the village. On the road, you noticed your wife glancing at you, wanting to say something but stopping your steps, looking at him with a face full of anticipation. Zhou Yao plucked up the courage to say, "Zhao Kun, can I go back to my parents' home tomorrow?" Just this, I'll go back with you tomorrow. Married for so long, the man beside her finally acted like a human. Knowing how to earn money to support the household and take care of his wife and daughter, Zhou Yao wanted to go back to her parents' home to put her mother's mind at ease so she wouldn't worry that she had married poorly. You thought your wife had spent so much time preparing herself to have something huge to say, but in the end it was just this. You held your daughter in one arm and held your wife's hand with the other. I'll go back with you tomorrow.